Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari. Jai Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Bhajajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Bhajajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Kunja Bihari. Jai Mr. Pad Paramahansa. Padadikacharya Ashtotar to the Shri Srimad Divine Grace. Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Padadikacharya Ashtotar to the Shri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur ki Jai. Ananda Koti Vaishnavinda ki Jai. Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam ki Jai. Samaveta Bhaktavinda ki Jai. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to Sri Guru and Gauranga. Okay. Narayan Namaskritya Narang Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiriye. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, we should offer our respectful obeisances unto Lord Narayan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and to Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, and to Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and to Srila Vyasadeva, the author, and unto Srila Prabhupada, the translator, commentator, and our spiritual master. Nashtaprayesha Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavat Sevaya Bhagavatyuttama Shloke Bhakti Bhavati Naishtiki. By regular attendance in classes on Srimad Bhagavatam and by rendering devotional service to the pure devotee, all that is inauspicious within the heart is destroyed almost to nil, and loving devotion to the Supreme Lord, who is glorified in transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. So before we begin, the number for asking questions, if you're out there, for those of you out there, 858-291-9815. Text to that number, and at 7:30 or so, we'll try to entertain your questions. Did I say 7:30? 8:30, I'm sorry. It's already way past 7:30. So did I do Om Namo? Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On this first day of April 2020 in SanDiego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. We are in Canto 4, The Creation of the Fourth Order, Chapter 23, Maharaj Pitu's Going Back Home, text number 15. Utsarpayang stutang murdhi Kramena veshaniksprihaha Vayum vayau chitau kayam Tejas tejasyayuya yujat Utsarpayang stutang murdhi Kramena veshaniksprihaha Vayum vayau chitau kayam Tejas tejasyayuya Utsarpayang stutam murdhi Kramena veshaniksprihaha Vayum vayau chitau kayam Tejas tejasyayujat Utsarpayang stutam murdhi Kramena veshaniksprihaha Vayum vayau chitau kayam Tejas tejasyayujat Utsarpayang stutam murdhi Kramena veshaniksprihaha Vayum vayau chitau kayam Tejas tejasyayujat Utsarpayang stutam murdhi Kramena veshaniksprihaha Vayum vayau chitau kayam Tejas tejasyayujat Utsarpayang stutam murdhi Kramena veshaniksprihaha Vayum vayau chitau kayam Tejas tejasyayujat Utsarpayang stutam murdhi Kramena veshaniksprihaha Vayum vayau chitau kayam Tejas tejasyayujat Utsarpayan, thus placing, tu, but, tam, the air, murdni, on the head, kramena, gradually, avishya, placing, niksprihaha, being freed from all material desires, vayum, the air portion of the body, vayau, in the total air covering the universe, chitau, in the total covering of earth, kayam, this material body, tejaha, the fire in the body, tejasi, in the total fire of the material covering, ayuyujat, mixed. Translation. In this way, Prithu Maharaj gradually raised his air of life up to the hole in his skull, whereupon he lost all desire for material existence. Gradually, he merged his air of life with the totality of air, his body with the totality of earth, and the fire within his body with the totality of fire. Purport. When the spiritual spark, which is described as 1/10,000th part of the tip of a hair, is forced into material existence, that spark is covered by gross and subtle material elements. The material body is composed of 5 gross elements, earth, water, fire, air, and ether, and 3 subtle elements, mind, intelligence, and ego. When one attains liberation, he is freed from these material coverings. Indeed, success in yoga involves getting free from these material coverings and entering into spiritual existence. Lord Buddha's teachings of nirvana are based on this principle. Lord Buddha instructed his followers to give up these material coverings by means of meditation and yoga. Lord Buddha did not give any information about the soul, but if one follows his instructions strictly, he will ultimately become free from the material coverings and attain nirvana. When the living entity gives up the material coverings, he remains a spirit soul. This spirit soul must enter into the spiritual sky to merge into the Brahman effulgence. Unfortunately, unless the living entity has information of the spiritual world and the Vaikunthas, there is a 99.9% chance of his falling down again into material existence. There is, however, a small chance of being promoted to a spiritual planet from the Brahman effulgence, or the Brahma Jyoti. This Brahma Jyoti is considered by impersonalists to be without variety, and the Buddhists consider it to be void. In either case, whether one accepts the spiritual sky as being without variety or void, there is none of the spiritual bliss which is enjoyed in the spiritual planets, the Vaikunthas or Krishna Loka. In the absence of varieties of enjoyment, the spirit soul gradually feels an attraction to enjoy a life of bliss, and not having any information of Krishna Loka or Vaikuntha Loka, he naturally falls down to material activities in order to enjoy material varieties. Om Jnana Timarandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmilitam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, but my spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada, opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara, the disciplic succession. So this scenario that is being described now is several other places in the Bhagavatam we hear similar descriptions. And this is a description of a point of success, you would say, in the yoga process. You're actually reversing the creation. If you read chapter, I forget which chapter it is, but it's Understanding Material Nature, I believe, in the Kapila Dev teachings in the 3rd canto, he describes the other process, how the living entity who is envious of Krishna somehow wants to turn away from Krishna, then he needs a different identity, because his natural identity, his eternal identity, is a servant of Krishna. Krishna, Jivera Sorupoi, Krishna Nityadas. Nityadas. Lord Chaitanya, Krishna, says that the eternal Sarup, or actual nature of the soul, is to be a servant of Krishna. So there has to be some artificial acceptance or imposition of this false identity on the soul, and that's called the false ego. So with that false ego, then interacting with the different modes of nature, gradually the senses and their sense objects and the sensations appear, and the gross and subtle coverings manifest. You can read the details in the 3rd canto. So this is the entrapment of the soul. Now the false ego means you have this illusion that you're whatever body you happen to be in. Even we can see in our one lifetime how as you go through the different ages, you stop identifying with the previous body and your nature. You know, you're a 6-year-old kid, and gradually after some time you're 20 years old. Well, you no longer have the same ideas and feelings and way of thinking of yourself as you would when you were 6 years old. And it doesn't dawn on everybody that the simple verse in the 2:13, that this means that you're not actually the body. You continue to identify with the body, because that's the whole thing that binds you here. If you identify with the body, then the interests of the body, keeping it safe and warm and enjoying the senses, are your primary interest, because that's who you are. So this whole process we've been hearing about, Prithu, it's really to reverse the process, to overcome the impulses of the senses and the mind, to enjoy, which brings you and keeps you deeply in the bodily concept of life. Do that through will, through all these severe austerities, amazing austerities you perform. So by that strengthening of the sense of oneself as a spirit soul, at a certain point, he's now coming to the point of perfection here, and he's reversing the problem, the process, by moving the life air up the chakras. Air is called air of life, previous verse and purport, except for one instance, it was called the life air. And this is the famous prana. You know, the subtle way in which the body works is through the circulation of the different airs, and the chakras are involved, and all of these different things. And now obviously each species has its own different set of chakras, their own, you know, the different way it's happening. But it's basically the same principle for every living entity. When I was just, every morning, as you probably know, I prepare those apricots. So I rinse them, and then I go to the sink and everything. And there was one dying cockroach. I didn't want to do the water on his side because I thought I would speed it up. But you know how they get it on the back, and he's, you know. I said, okay, Hare Krishna, what can you do for him? So then I happened to go in there again, and I figured, well, he must have expired by now. But no, he's still, moving around like he's still trying to stay in that body, because that's all he knows, In other words, you identify with whatever body you're in, and you try as long as you can to preserve that situation in that body. And it's really tragic when you understand the actual glory of the soul as a spiritual being in the spiritual world, eternal, full of bliss, full of knowledge. And now, due to turning away from Krishna and embracing this false identity, you come all the way down, and that's not even all the way down, as we know, but that's far way down, to this poor insect who's just somehow trying to exist in this, horrible body now at the point of death, So that's the situation that we should be fully aware of and very sober about, because we're, not only human beings, which is a great fortune, but human beings who are somewhat interested and in practicing seriously the process to end this imprisonment within the material world. So we're having, this is a very instructive verse and purport here, because it describes the nature of the soul who's reversed the process and now is coming forth almost like a butterfly, from a little cocoon, which is really what you are. You're trapped in this cocoon, and you come forth in the glory of the soul. So Prithu, of course, is not going to try to stay in an impersonal state in the Brahmajyoti. He's, as the whole title of the chapter says, he wants to go back home. He's a devotee. But this escape from the imprisonment of the gross and subtle body is a universal principle for anyone who wants liberation, especially for devotees. So Prabhupada mentions here that Lord Buddha's teachings of nirvana are based on this principle. He probably would often use the term dismantling if you hear Prabhupada's lectures and sometimes in the books, dismantling this gross and subtle imprisonment. In other words, he was teaching, even though he's an incarnation of Krishna, that the ultimate reality is void, because he felt he had to reject the Vedas. You know why? Because the Vedas had been misused for cow slaughter, because there's some provision for sacrifice of a cow very rarely, and so he rejected the Vedas. But this teaching is similar, is that whether the ultimate reality is Brahman, undifferentiated Brahman, or a void, the result is practically the same, is that you don't have anything to do. You're simply free from the imprisonment of birth and death, samsara. That's the great goal. But as Prabhupada points out here, that's not the real nature of the soul, simply to be existing, free of pain. We want positive bliss, and that's our birthright. Anandamaya abhyasat, Prabhupada would often quote, that's one of the sutras describing the Supreme, which means by the activities of the Supreme, the abhyasa means practice, right? Abhyasa yogena tato. By his practice, by his lila, by his pastimes, we can see that he's always in bliss. I just heard a lecture where Prabhupada said whether Krishna's on the battlefield or he's in the cow field in Vrindavan, he's always happy. He's always blissful. The fighting with the demons were just pleasure excursions for him. Right? I think he mentioned that in previous purport. So he's always blissful. And we're part and parcel of Krishna. Therefore, our nature is to be always blissful. But now we're clearly not in this material situation. In fact, it's so tragic, really, is that whether you're in a cockroach body, human body, or demigod body, you're still looking for that bliss. You're still looking for that happiness. But you're looking for it in the material energy, which is, it can't be there. That's one of the main drawbacks of material sense gratification. The happiness is there, but it's very flickering. You know, you're longing for it, then you may experience it. If you're due to experience it, then it's gone, it's in the rearview mirror, you know, and you want to do it again, and you become addicted to do that. It's harmful. Yehi sangsparjaja boka dukkha yonai evate. Those pleasures that you enjoy, whether they're gross or subtle, still sense gratification, is the source of your misery. Not only in this one life. You know, I'm amazed. You still have people smoking cigarettes. I take my walk. I get out of the cave, you know, and I walk. And even one of my neighbors, you know, of course, she's living with someone who doesn't smoke, so she's got to go outside to smoke, you know. And walking up, and there's another guy smoking. I went across the street so I wouldn't get to smoke. And how can it's like a metaphor for material life, you know. There's some pleasure there because you've created an addiction. So there's obviously some pleasure which solves something. You know, I used to smoke. So, okay, I need a cigarette, you know. But what about your intelligence? What happened? How are you approaching that, you know? You know it's not good for you. After some time, you feel it. I mean, as a young man, I was 16 years old, and I was feeling, I have more trouble climbing the stairs, you know. There's obviously harm there going on. This was even before they put the signs on, hazardous to your health, you know, where they find it. But still, the addiction is there. And the same thing is there for any pleasure. The sex life is like, you know, okay, there's a pleasure there, but then there's also a reaction. Even in this one life you can see, you know, there's an emotional involvement, and that can also can produce tremendous a lot of pain when that's broken or there's some disturbance. And then there's a child, you know, it's unexpected. There's diseases, you know. And if you're understanding about karma, what about abortion? You know, which is taken for granted. It's just, you know, that there's a place for it within Varnashram, but you can see it's all very restricted, and it's sanctified by the sanskaras, and then producing a child who's a devotee, you know, that's one thing. But in the modern world, it's just the highest pleasure and produces the highest pain. And so, what does it take to understand that? What does it take? It takes several things. First of all, some experience in the material world, which is going to come to everybody. But also the association of someone who can give you the truth and who embodies the truth. This is the sadhu sangha principle, which is always essential. And one's ability to receive that truth and allow it to transform one's life, at least to the extent of coming again, studying it, hearing it, so that you have the tensions now between your external material life and addictions and the knowledge that there's a way out of that, in which you can still enjoy even much more than before. See, most people are afraid if they give up the material enjoyments, what'll I do? You know? So that's the greatest thing about the bhakti process, is that you actually start experiencing more happiness. Like we just had this kirtan, of course, there's only a few of us and everything, and we got the coronavirus plague which is out there, so there's a little bit of a down, but still you can see the source of the pleasure is there, the holy name, the beautiful deities, the service of the Lord. All of that can provide pleasure in the here and now for our senses, for our mind, which are at present addicted and locked up with the material energy. So this is another method of getting out. It's obviously not suitable for anybody in this age, maybe very, very few, not for the mass. But the principle is the same, whether it's bhakti process or this Ashtanga yoga process, which culminates in bhakti. It's very appropriate. In the evening we're reading the 12th chapter, and he mentions there, about dhyan. He mentions that, but it all culminates in bhakti. The whole, even in impersonalism, okay, eventually they can come to me if they do this, this, and this, So the principle is bhakti. If you take it up without delay, then you save so much time. And who knows how much time we really have. This is the whole idea that if you're fortunate and you can get faith in this bhakti process leading to Krishna, then don't waste time with these other things. And because the success is there in bhakti. Now, Prabhupada quotes here, he doesn't quote the verse, but he's referring to it. Here he gives a percentage, 99.9%. So that means there's 1/10 of 1%. Okay. And he mentions that. There is, however, a small chance of being promoted to the spiritual planet from the Brahman effulgence. All right, we won't. That's that's not so pertinent to us. Why go to the Brahman effulgence? Why even be attracted to it? It's just as the famous verse says. The Kaivalyam Narakayate, Prabodhananda Saraswati. Beautiful verse Prabhupada would quote. For one who has been empowered by the sidelong merciful glance of Lord Chaitanya. These are the effects. Kaivalyam Narakayate Didashapur Akasha Pushpayate Durdandendriyakara Sarvapatali Prodkata Dhangstrayate Vishwam Purna Sukhayate Vidimahindra Jistakitayate Yat Karunyakataksa Vaibhavatam Tam Goldame Vastamak. This is the golden avatar of my praise. So those who are empowered, who are blessed by attraction to Lord Chaitanya and his movement and take part in it, then here's the result. Kaivalyam Narakayate. Can you guess what it means? Damodar? Tell us. Ramapati. Kaivalyam Narakayate? Yeah, what do you see? Kaivalya, merging into the Brahman. What to speak of the void, that's even worse. And Tridashapur Akasha Pushpayate. So Tridashapur refers to all 33 million, whatever you want to, heavenly planets. The promise of that. So that's in the Vedas also. It's like an Akasha Pushpa. You can guess what that means. Akash is sky flower. Yeah, sky flower. In other words, there's no point in aspiring for it because it doesn't even exist. The reality of it may be there, but it's as important to you as the sky flower. In other words, unimportant. And then, so that's the karma kanda. Then you come to the yogis, the serious yogis, who are trying like anything. Durdantendriya. It means very difficult to suppress senses. Dur, danta, indriya, are like poisonous serpents. Kala sarpa. They'll bite you. Your eyes will take you here. But Prahlad has this verse. I'm like a man with 6 wives. My tongue is taking me one place, my ears are taking me another place. She's dragging me here. Prahlad has a verse like that. Prahlad Maharaj. So they're like serpents that'll bite you and poison your consciousness. But what did he say? Kala sarpa patali prodkata dangstrayate. Does anyone know what that means? Yeah, he's giving us the pantomime. It has the poisoned teeth or fangs removed. So the same senses are there, but they're not harming you. They're helping you because they're engaged in Krishna's service. That's the idea. So you don't have to be a great yogi. Just, clean the temple room and worship the deities and go and take prasadam. And all your senses are engaged. And here. And then what about the demigods, what are they? Vishwam Purna Sukhayate. So Krishna is certified that this world is dukkhalayam ashashvatam. Right? It is full of misery and temporary. But this phrase says Vishwam Purna Sukhayate. For such devotees who have been blessed by Lord Chaitanya, they see the whole universe as full of happiness. Like Prahlad. In other words, even though you see the threefold miseries going on, you also see Krishna's Leela going on everywhere. And for you, you're not depressed by all of these things because you're at a different plane. You're existing on this blissful Ananda plane. And then finally, Vidi Mahindra Dishtakitayate. This is typical Prabodhananda. He has other verses like this. And although you respect the demigods. You don't worship them or anything, but you see them as far as your need to worship them. As they're on the level Vidhi Mahendra. The Vidhi is Brahma, Mahendra is Indra. It's no more significant than insects as far as your need to worship. So this is the result of being embraced by Lord Chaitanya's movement and surrendering to Lord Chaitanya's movement. You surpass all these other means of elevation. They're uninteresting. You're irrelevant to you. And here's the problem: is that even if you're able to get to the Brahma Jyoti, the bliss isn't there. You have basically the Sat Chidananda. You have the Sat aspect of it, the eternal. Now I'm in my eternal life. No more birth, no more death. But it's negative. It's like getting out of the hospital. All right, I'm free of pain. I'm cured. Now what? Do I just stand there? I'm free of pain. No, you want to do things. There's so many things you need to do. So therefore, these poor Yenya Vindaksha Vimukta they think they're liberated in their own mind, but eventually they fall down again, patantyado, because they're averse to serving your lotus feet. So if from the beginning we can be unaverse and be actually attracted to worshipping Krishna's lotus feet, we don't have to go through this big detour up to the Brahma Jyoti or waste so much time. So that's the idea. And in this age, this process that Prithu engaged in is not necessary for us. The end point is the same, but it's inconceivable for us. It's just like even the sixth chapter of Bhagavad Gita, that was inconceivable for Arjuna. Going alone and practicing all those things. The mind is like a big wind. How can I, control this hurricane wind of my mind? Well, it can be controlled, but it has to be controlled by becoming attracted to Krishna. That's how it's controlled. Maya saktamana parta yogam yunjan manashi. And that's what the process of bhakti is all about. But the goal is the same. So, any discussion on these points? Prithu Maharaj's apotheosis, he's moving the life air. Balaram has something. Even without, did you take notes? Didn't need any notes. Okay, go ahead.
I was wondering about sometimes devotees, there's two camps, you could say, and one camp they say, okay, well, Jivers, they're quoting the same verses and reading the same books, obviously, but one is okay, our original spiritual form and spiritual positions it's already fixed. And then the other camp is saying that, depending on your development, depending on your attraction, or depending on how you your meditation, it will develop. A certain form will develop. So, do you have any comments about that?
Yeah, this idea, Sarup Siddhi, the perfection of discovering, learning what your Sarup is, and then meditating on that as part of your sadhana, and eventually being promoted, we would say return back home, back to Godhead, and take up that service. And the way I understand it is, is that we start out, it's a mystery to us who we really are, We know the basics, we're eternal servants of Krishna, and we act on that platform. We can do things on that platform, chant Krishna's name, we can do all kinds of services. And hear Krishna's, the glories, Bhagavad Gita, different Bhagavatam, and also the 10th canto, Krishna's Leela, and other books eventually. And in that way, our innate attraction, our Sarup, because we become more and more purified, comes out. And we become, as Prabhupada explained it, we become more and more attracted to hearing about certain individual devotees even, who are in a certain rasa that we're attracted to. And you like to hear that and meditate and contemplate that. And that's an indication of your actual Sarup. So at the same time, you're making the decision, I want to hear this, I want to hear that, I want to think of Krishna in this way. But what's really happening there is that you're becoming more and more purified, and your natural swarup is coming out, and it encourages you to make the decision to follow a certain path of hearing and chanting that will encourage that rasa. So it seems like both things are there, but for in various places, Prabhupada talks about discovering, reestablishing your awareness of your swarup, siddhi, your actual form, your eternal form. What does it mean? Mukti hitpanyata rupam swarupena vivastiti. This is the definition of mukti given in the 10th chapter of the second canto. There's kind of a table of contents there describing the 10 subject matters of the Bhagavatam. And one of them is mukti, and this is the most quoted of the 10, what that is. Because there's such a confusion about mukti. Here the Brahmavadis or the Mayavadis, they think mukti means simply escape and to become a spiritual spark again in the Brahmajyoti. But no, according to Bhagavatam, mukti means to give up all of these other forms, like the one we've been occupying for our lifetime. And it's not just one, it's many forms, even in this one lifetime. And thousands of others. Anyata, be different than your swarup, and to be situated again in your swarup. So if swarup means anything, it means your eternal form. Just like Krishna has his swarup, his original form is Krishna, and he expands into other forms, But it's that threefold bending form, ete chantakalapamsa Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam. That the Swayam there has the word sva in it also. That all these other forms, and he mentioned Matsya Avatar and Varaha and so many other expansions in the Shringadev and others, they're partial or plenary expansions of Krishna. But Krishna is Bhagavan himself. He is the absolute personality of God. He's not an avatar. He's actually avatari, the source of all the other avatars. So we also have our swarup in relation to Krishna, which we're aiming to discover and act in relation to, and eventually return to that form in the spiritual world. That's how I understand it.
You mentioned just now about hearing the glories of Krishna and the Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, and I forgot. I was some devotee. I was reading one of his books. I forgot who it was, but he was making the point. He was saying, "Yeah, it took me so many years to appreciate the Bhagavad Gita." He said, "Many years I was in the movement before I was actually able to appreciate the Bhagavad Gita."
Uh-huh.
So maybe you could comment on that, because you obviously been reading the Bhagavad Gita for many years, and also been giving class on the Bhagavad Gita for many years. But just that, maybe that over time, that kind of development of appreciating the Bhagavad Gita more and more, because of course it's a misconception, but like Bhagavad Gita, that's kind of not
elementary.
Yeah, that's elementary, and the Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita or something. But Bhagavad Gita, after all, it is right, Sri Bhagavan Uvacha. Krishna's saying.
Yeah. It reminds me of because I listen to lectures all the time, and so Prabhupada is telling this story of Lord Chaitanya's trip to South India. And what is it, Rangakshetra, or the big temple, or Ramesham or something? Srirangam. So he's visiting that temple, and there's this devotee reading the Bhagavad Gita, but he can't actually read. You've heard this before. It's in the CC. His spiritual master told him to read the 18 chapters every day, but he can't read. So what's he going to do? So he sits there, and Prabhupada imitates, and some other guys come and they make fun of him, So he ignores him, just keeps reading. So Lord Chaitanya was there, and he questioned him, "What are you doing?" "I'm reading, my spirit." And Prabhupada says he could tell that Lord Chaitanya was not mocking him. He didn't use that word, but that's the end. So he said. So Lord said, "Yes, I understand that, but sometimes you're crying. I see you cry." He said, "Yes, sometimes I shed tears." And how is that, Lord? He said, "Because as soon as I pick up the Bhagavad Gita and start reading, I see the picture." And this is a little editing pastime, because the way Prabhupada said it, it was like, oh, I see the pictures, like we see the pictures in our Bhagavad Gita. He actually looks at the pictures. No, he sees the picture within his mind. In fact, I got that correction from listening to this tape, because Prabhupada describes it as seeing within myself. Anyway, so he's visualizing, and he's feel like he's there, and he's appreciating Lord Krishna's mercy, of becoming the chariot driver and all that, So in other words, he's getting into the whole rasa of the thing, rather than just the philosophy, which is glorious, but there's a personality there that Lord Krishna is relating to Arjuna, So that's one of the ways in which you appreciate, you deepen your appreciation of Bhagavad Gita, is Lord, Krishna's mercy for coming down, speaking this book, taking the trouble, and Prabhupada's mercy and his great effort to give it to us in such a way that it would mean something to us, because many of us from the 60s, we read Bhagavad Gita before we read this Bhagavad Gita as it is, and you scratch your head, you know what to do. So that's one of the ways in which you can deepen your appreciation of Bhagavad Gita, is actually understand the personal relation that's going on there. Krishna's relation to Arjuna, how he's so kind, he took the role of his chariot driver, and that he's speaking this summary, and it's such a dramatic situation. There's such a limited amount of time. Prabhupada says a half hour max, When you think about it, try to chant the Bhagavad, those 700 verses in half an hour, It's very difficult. So somehow or other, he's getting that across in the limited time. And there's a lot going on there on that level also. So that's one way it could be that he's appreciating it. And I never feel I've outgrown the Bhagavad Gita, because Prabhupada preached it from day one until the very end. In other words, he was always using it to make points. And I just heard him said, or maybe we read it, I sometimes mix these things up. He would always quote the Bhagavad Gita, and one thing he's saying, well, how do you get faith in Krishna? By reading Bhagavad Gita. In other words, that's the preliminary way which most people get faith in Krishna, that he's God, by reading the Bhagavad Gita, and especially Bhagavad Gita as it is. And that faith is foundational, So these are all different ways in which you can continue to appreciate Bhagavad Gita and deepen your appreciation in your whole devotional career. That's not to say you don't read Bhagavatam and you read CC. Each of them is unique and different in what they're presenting, the way they're presenting the philosophy clearly. So that's about it. You heard 48 minutes? You heard 45. All right. Anyway, try chanting it. I've chanted the whole Gita, and it took more than 2 hours. Of course, we were in chanting stop speed. There's somebody sent in something here. And, this anonymous person, I just have a phone number here. Okay, so this is something else. Okay, anything else? Okay, all glory to Srila Prabhupada. Hari Hari.